Hello everybody, Min-Max Munchkin back with another video. Today is Cyber Monday, the last day to grab the online campaign discount. Campaign name is Melendor Chronicles: The Undoing of Odoron. You can find more information about my world and the campaign in general in the description below this video. If you would like to play a high-powered 5th edition campaign, a homebrew campaign, sign up for this waitlist right away. The link towards this form is also going to be linked down below in the description. And once you do that, I will get back in touch with you regarding the available time slots and schedule. With that out of the way, as I usually start all of my videos, the patron shoutouts. So Mike, Matthew, Ewing, Larry Hocken, BardlyManHardlyTrying, Rogor, Kaleron, SuburbanHell, Frank Fan, Gary Course, Albert Kwak, Aidan Harth, Oldham, Darth Xín, C Alcazar, ya boy Fox, Bryan Moten, Bredwin, Sean, Guys, Clay, Mannozzi Stefano, Gaston Ramirez, Sinas, Nathan James, Primal Bass Boost, Jeremy C. Roy, Bittenby, Kyle Shikes, Trevor Green, Jordan Smith Bassett, Lloyd, Lord Gazda, Michael Talhooser, Inácio Neto, Maligaant Menuk, Anthony Du, Devin Jache, Devin Jache, and Lunatic Dragon. Thank you for your continued support, all new and old patrons. You are giving me plenty of reasons to keep releasing more videos more frequently, more often, and trying to improve the quality, even though I know a lot of my videos are subpar in terms of the stuff that I release. But hey, I'm the single man here, so it's one-man operation, so sometimes I can't really do everything as well as I would like it to be. If you are not present on this list, if you don't see your name here, and if you would like to support my channel and everything I do here, first and foremost, the best thing you can do is leave a like on this video and every other video that I released in the past and that I will release in the future. However, if you are thinking that I'm worth the trouble, there's always an option to chuck a few bucks my way. There are perks that come with these tiers, especially the magical secrets. You get PDFs and Word files used in all the videos on this channel, so all of my builds and class overviews and all of that stuff is regularly being uploaded and released here for your convenience, for your downloads. So if you're interested and are willing to get in, definitely consider doing that. And with all of that out of the way, with all of that said, let's jump into the topic of today's video, which is basically one of the newest, or the newest, Unearthed Arcana Fighter, Rogue, and Wizard, which has been released like, I don't know, 5 or 6 days ago. Now, I wanted to make a video about it right after it got released, but some other stuff happened, so I just had to wait a little bit. And yeah, basically this is it, guys. This is the video where I share these thoughts. I've started doing it recently, so I just don't want to ruin the tradition, and this has been released recently, so I feel like I should address this first. Anyway, this newest Unearthed Arcana came with 3 Psionic Subclasses, 1 for Fighter, Rogue, and Wizard each. This follows Wizards of the Coast distancing from the 2017 Mystic class Unearthed Arcana, and also into introducing the psionics within the scope of existing 12 or now recently 13 classes that we have officially published for all the 5th edition books altogether. All 3 subclasses are heavily intelligence dependent, which only makes sense considering the psionics theme, you know, the vibe of each and every one of their respective features and all of that stuff. The first on the list is obviously the Fighter archetype, Psychic Warrior, a subclass with limited intelligence-based psionic features. It's primarily still a fighter, but it suffers from a bit of a madness as well, because you really need to max out both your intelligence and your attack ability, which is usually strength or dexterity. It's quite backloaded, and with new features incrementally expanding its psionic capabilities, it doesn't feel like you get everything or most of your powers right away. It feels like you get a little bit and progressively get better and better as you keep leveling up. So what are these features and powers? First and foremost, Psionic Armament, which you get at level 3 and then it improves at level 10. It's a basically low risk, low reward feature with, you know, there's no limit to the amount of time you can use this other than, you know, once a turn, based on whatever you do, right? You have defenses, and obviously the strikes are more offensively oriented. So, you know, when you finish a long rest, you choose whether to augment your defenses or your strike / offenses, right? The chosen benefit lasts until you finish the next long rest, so basically for the whole day. Augmented defenses are only passable on lower levels, because the amount of potential damage it can negate, you know, a d10, is it barely scales with rapidly increasing number of attacks and damage coming your way at higher levels. At level 10, the d10 dice becomes a d12, and that's it, you know. On the other hand, there's no limit to how many times you can use this per day if you choose to use this particular Psionic Armament. And as long as you have your reaction free and you take damage and you don't want to take damage, you use your reaction to cut that down a little bit, you know. And in a similar way, augmented strikes once a turn, which is a once a turn feature. It's extra damage. It's 1d4 at level 3 and then 1d6 at level 10. That's not nearly enough to warrant like any meaningful scaling at higher levels. But at level 3, when you get these two features, they can actually be quite impactful, you know. Being able to negate up to d10 worth of damage, up to 10 damage, or dealing on average 2.5 more damage once a turn at level 3 is actually pretty meaningful, because you're still dealing with enemies that have like 20, 30, maybe 40 hit points, maybe 50 at most. So every little bit of damage at that level helps. But as you keep leveling up, as the enemies get up to 100 hit points, 200 hit points, it gets progressively less and less impactful. However, that's not nearly as bad, because as I said at the beginning, the class feels like you don't just get all of the core features of the subclass right away. It feels like you're getting a little bit of new stuff as you keep leveling up. Another thing that you get at level 3 is Telekinetic Hand. You learn the Mage Hand cantrip, which you can cast without components, and you can make this Mage Hand, the Spectral Hand, invisible, which again uses your intelligence. And Mage Hand is often a nifty little in and out of combat utility, or even sometimes support spell, so you being able to cast it without anybody even perceiving that you are casting it, or anybody even perceiving the hand being manipulated all around you, is actually, that can be used quite creatively and can often actually yield more and better results than just swinging your sword mindlessly at the target, right? At level 7, Strength of the Mind, obviously another thing that you get, a bonus action, so this is good because we do want to gain as much action economy as possible. 2d6 plus intelligence modifier and push and pull mechanic. So first and foremost, that isn't the highest damage in the game, but moving a creature 15 feet can often help you or your allies get into better positions, or even synergize with other casters. For example, you can push and pull the creature in the druid's casting the spell Spike Growth. So while the creature is inside of the Spike Growth area, you use your Strength of the Mind to push it or pull it, and basically deal more damage that way. So, you know, team play, party synergy, all of that fancy stuff. That's just one of the things you can do, obviously. Being able to control the positioning of enemies at any given point in time is always something that comes up into play, and that you can't necessarily always quantify and measure in any standard obvious way, right? That's just something that comes up in the actual gameplay, and you do it, and then, you know, it yields results based on the type of circumstances that you're dealing with. For example, if you're dealing with the melee monster, pushing it away from yourself, obviously that can help you get less damage, get out of the way of the enemy, or whatever, right? So there's things that you can do with this, and I think this is decent, you know, a little bit of damage. The strength saving throw is relevant, and obviously controlling the positioning is always relevant regardless of the level. Obviously it is limited by the intelligence modifier, but that's usually how these features boil down to. They get limited amount of uses, and I think the feature is powerful enough on its own that there should be some type of limit, and making it limited by intelligence modifier is pretty much the only thing that makes sense for a psionics oriented, you know, subclass. Telekinetic Bulwark is a mechanically very interesting feature in my opinion. It relies on 2 core class features. Extra attack basically to activate at level 11. So at level 5 you get your second attack using extra attack, right? But at level 10 you get this feature, and then right away at level 11 you get your third attack using the extra attack feature. So basically it kind of, you have to sacrifice one of those 2 or 3 attacks to use it, but also if you need to refresh it, it goes off of your second wind, which is a short rest feature, as I'm sure most of us or all of us know. So it's very interesting in that regard that it ties so neatly into the core class features, and the effect is actually quite potent. Not overpowered in my mind, but it's actually quite potent. It provides an aura-like effect that in essence basically increases all of your allies' armor class and gives advantage on strength saving throws. Now, strength saving throw advantage doesn't necessarily come up very often, but armor class is the number that's often contested. A lot of enemies, even on higher levels, still rely on attack rolls against you. So this is kind of the most useful thing to have against ranged attacks, something that does become more prevalent at higher levels anyway. So, you know, but on the other hand, also against those enemies that like to, you know, knock, shove, or push you away based on your strength saving throws, or any type of strength saving throw that does something negative to you. The armor class, obviously, as I said, is the more often contested type of number, contested type of, you know, check, whatever you want to call it, but strength saving throw will definitely come up here or there as well. Now, agonizing strikes is basically a feature that allows you a mini nova, and it kind of buffs itself. The potential for a minimum of 10d10 extra damage in one turn, it is limited up to your intelligence modifier, but honestly, if you play this subclass and with the amount of our ability score improvements that the fighters have access to, right? So at levels 4, 6, 8, 12, you know, 4, whatever, a lot of ability score increases, improvements. I would say that you definitely do want to max out your intelligence, not just for agonizing strikes, but also for the strength of the mind, which is good, and all of the other things that go off of your intelligence. So going back to agonizing strikes, the 10d10 extra damage in one turn, you do have action surge, so you can actually unload a lot of attacks at level 15, up to 7, 8, who knows how many. Is made better with potential prone conditions, because if the enemy fails the constitution saving throw, the enemy gets knocked prone, and therefore you immediately have higher critical chance on all of your subsequent attacks. Don't forget that the prone condition basically gives you advantage on all attack rolls if you are within 5 feet of the creature. So, you know, it is limited by intelligence modifier, yes, and again, it really incentivizes you to go for intelligence, and it does induce more madness. However, it is really something that, you know, you can push so much damage on top of what you can do just by the virtue of being a fighter, just swinging your sword, right? The downside is that, well, to be perfectly honest, to me it's not entirely clear whether a creature has to make a con saving throw, you know, every time. Because if it does, this subclass is then inherently better for melee builds, because ranged weapon attacks are made with disadvantage against prone creatures, right? Otherwise, the attack roll has disadvantage if the creature is not within 5 feet of the proned creature, right? So if the attacker is not within 5 feet. So, in a way, it's kind of contentious a little bit, because, okay, so when you hit the creature, you can also deal 2d10 psychic damage and force it to make a con saving throw. Okay, so I'm not sure how this exactly reads. You can also deal 2d10. You don't have to deal 2d10 psychic damage, but you have the option, right? And force it to make a con saving throw. Does that mean that once you choose to deal this 2d10 psychic damage, that you actually cannot choose not to force the enemy, the target, to make a con saving throw? Or does it mean that once you choose to deal 2d10 psychic damage, the enemy, the target of that damage, does have to make a con saving throw? Now, realistically, common sense would kind of dictate that the target has to make a con saving throw, because agonizing strikes, you chose to just inflict more pain and, you know, push it prone, you know, make it fall down on the floor. However, if you think mechanically, this does sort of pigeonhole you into melee-oriented builds, because if you use this with a ranged weapon attack, and you choose to deal more damage, and for whatever reason, by the virtue of choosing to use this feature, the creature has no choice. You have no choice, and the creature has no choice. The creature, the target of this feature, has to make a con saving throw. Then all of your subsequent ranged weapon attacks after the creature fails the saving throw are made with disadvantage. So again, it goes back to, if that's how it works, melee builds are more obviously better for this type of subclass. Now, I think this is definitely probably gonna get addressed if this subclass ever gets officially released. But that's just something that I kind of noticed, and I'm not really sure how to interpret it. Now, I tried to search around a little bit whether there was some sage advice already. I wasn't able to find anything particularly pertaining to this issue, but, you know, to me, in terms of mechanics, I think that for the sake of more options, for allowing people to play a more variable types of characters, I think it would be better that it works in a way that you can choose both effects. You can choose to deal 2d10 psychic damage, but even if you do deal the psychic damage, you still don't have to force the creature to make a con saving throw, right? However, it just might be that it works in unison, right? So, food for thought. Let me know down in the comments below what you think, and whether one of the designers, Jeremy Crawford, or even some of the other ones, you know, spread some opinions on it, shed some thought and light on the issue. Level 18 Psychic Dreadnought is, you know, okay, so immunity, okay, so capstone subclass feature, which gives you a very powerful reaction, the increase to walking speed, and less movement speed to get up are nice perks, but the real juice is in the hit points regeneration, in my opinion. Compared to champion fighters, for example, level 18 feature, let's just quickly compare the two of them. This one, I think, is just plain better, right? So, Survivor, right, at 18th level, same level, right? You can regain hit points equal to 5 plus your con modifier. So, let's say your constitution modifier is plus 5. Let's just say you dumped everything into your constitution, right? Let's just say you maxed it out. That's still only 10 hit points regeneration per turn, and if you have no more than half of your hit points. So if you have more than half of your hit points left, this just doesn't work, right? This feature just plain works. Sure, it uses your reaction. It only lasts for a minute. This one is pretty much passive, but in a pinch, when you absolutely need it, most combats really last only, even on higher levels, like 3, 4, maybe 5 rounds. So the sooner you can activate your self-regeneration, the better, right? Because 10 hit points at level 18 is, you're definitely, if somebody tries to damage you, if the DM decides to use monsters to attack you and deal damage to you, you're gonna take more damage. More damage than just 10, right? Almost guaranteed. So, instead of waiting before you drop down below half of your hit points, if you're a champion fighter, you can immediately use your reaction and start self-regenerating, right? And obviously, if you get knocked prone and all of that stuff, you can get up easier, and your walking speed also increases. So, compared to champions, late 18th level feature, Survivor, I think this is just plain better, and it kind of follows the trend, follows the pattern of power creep, which first got introduced with the infamous Hexblade and Xanatars, and pretty much most, and if not all of these Unearthed Arcana subclasses that have been steadily being released over the past year have pretty much been, in most cases, more powerful than most, if not all, of the officially released subclasses that we already have in the game, especially the ones released in a player's handbook, such as obviously Champion and all of the other ones. So I just think that, you know, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but that's just something that's clearly obvious, right? It's just, it cannot be denied. So yeah, whether it's good or bad remains to be seen. I don't really even think that's bad. But obviously, if you want to play, if this ever gets made official and you just want to play something that's gonna be competent in all sorts of scenarios, this is clearly better than a champion fighter. As are most of the fighter subclasses. I mean, I guess this just turned into me shitting on champion all over again, but it's just a reality, you know, so it is what it is. Anyway, a roguish archetype, Soulknife Rogue, is basically a mystic subclass, right? There is the mystic subclass of the same name called, I don't even know, like, I don't even know where it is over here. It's, let me just, god damn it. Soul, yeah, let me try to find it this way. There we go. So, Soulknife, I mean, it's 2 words, and here it's kind of 1 word. It's pretty much the same thing. Mechanically, it does bear vague resemblance to the Mystic subclass, but it has obviously been heavily modified to fit the core Rogue class features and to fit the levels where the Rogue gets its subclass features and all the other capabilities. So basically, Psychic Blade is sort of the Soulknife feature, which has been reverted, rehauled. It's been modified, but it's very similar. It doesn't have the AC increasing capability, but in other regards, it's kind of like the same thing. The cool factor is undeniable. You literally think the blades into existence. You just think about them and then they materialize. Mechanically, it is a little bit wonky with the action economy because it requires a bonus action to activate. However, you know, if you're just walking around with your psychic short swords in your hand, it's not really gonna matter that much. I mean, sure, in the middle of the city where the guards are gonna tell you, you know, yeah, sure, you can have weapons on your person, but don't just walk around with them. You know, people are gonna think you're gonna kill them. It's kind of weird, but you know, even if you don't do that, you still use your bonus action only once. You know, and using just one bonus action, you can create both blades. So why would you not create both of them, right? Unless you are holding something else in your other hand. In that case, yeah, sure. But details, right? The downside is simultaneously an upside too, in my opinion. You can't really get disarmed, right? Nobody can really take your weapons away from you, right? Your weapons are literally stored in your mind, in your psyche. Every time you just want to put your weapons away, you just think them away. And every time you want to have them in your hands, you just think them into existence. So I think this is often sometimes that gets underutilized by DMs. I'm the first person guilty of that. I did do it a couple of times. I actually took the character's weapons and all of that stuff, but for the most part, during my sessions, you know, my characters, if they are gonna go into the combat, they have, at the very least thing that they have is their weapons and spellcasting foci. So, yeah, in a way, even I don't utilize that thing very often, but that's just something that does legitimately, it can happen, you know, and some players don't like it, some players actually think that's fine. Some DMs I've heard that they use it all the time. I think there's a little bit of a too much in every way and in that regard as well, but you know, it's always a possibility, and this particular roguish archetype pretty much makes it impossible for your DM to strip you off of your weapons. You get another feature at level 3, Psionic Enhancement. Telepathy is probably the best choice, if you ask me, Even though its power isn't immediately obvious and fully quantifiable, it never really is. You can't really know, how good the telepathy is. It just depends on the circumstances and how you use the telepathy, right? If you don't care about playing a mental type of character who uses telepathy, up to 25 extra hit points, or even just 5 more movement speed, which for rogues is pretty much, well, 10 more movement speed, because they have their cunning action, which allows them to use bonus action to dash. So every round 10 more movement speed, even 15 if you use your action to dash as well. It can be relevant too, considering that this is still more of a melee oriented rogue. You don't have to be, you can still choose to chuck your psychic blades, but the moment the blade hits or misses the target, it disappears, it vanishes, so you have to use your bonus action to chuck it again. So if you want to go 2-weapon fighting, and it's kind of better to just go melee in that regard, because you can just materialize two blades into your hands. You don't have to do it, obviously, but psychic damage on top of the fact that you can't get disarmed, then it kind of synergizes with your other features. I don't think the reason why you would not do it, right? So yeah, that's it for the Psionic Enhancement and Psychic Blade. Now, Terrifying Blade, the level 9 feature, is not really particularly useful against quite a bit of monsters, actually, because a lot of monsters are actually immune to Frightened Condition, or if they just pass the saving throw, if they succeed, they become temporarily immune. So, if the monster has a lot of Wisdom saving throw bonus, high bonus in Wisdom saving throw, it just kind of passes the saving throw, succeeds, and then this feature is completely useless. However, the upside to all this is that there is no really limit to the amount of times you can use this. If you read the feature, it doesn't say you can use this up to your intelligence modifier, like a lot of other features are actually limited. This one you can pretty much keep using as long as you hit the creature with your Psychic Blade. It requires no additional action economy expenditure, so you swing your Psychic Blade, you stab with it. If you hit, if you deal damage, you can choose to try to terrify the target, to, make it frightened. So it's kind of another one of those low investment. You pretty much, you get the feature where you only gain additional thing on top of the thing that you already do, right? But the additional thing is kind of a hit or miss in terms of sometimes it works, but sometimes it just won't work because of the immunities. I think overall it's kind of a good thing to have, because even if you can't really use it, yeah, sure, then this feature is kind of terrible, but and situational, but if you can use it, it's kind of low investment, and you just do it on top of the stuff that you already do. So, all you need is to damage a target with your Psychic Blade, make it frightened, and Frightened Condition is actually pretty useful, A frightened creature has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls while the source of its fear is within line of sight. If you stay within the line of sight of the frightened target, it pretty much stays frightened. So, and the creature can't willingly move closer to the source of its fear. So let's say you frighten the target and then you use your bonus action to disengage, right, using your cunning action, and then you just move away. And, if you increase your movement speed by 5 feet, you can move like 35, maybe even 40 feet, depending on other factors. Maybe you're a race, maybe you're a wood elf. And, then the monster can't really get closer to you because it's frightened. And everybody else moves away from the monster, and the monster has melee attacks. So, yeah, this definitely has some utilities, some effectiveness in combat. If not always, I'd say probably more often than not, right? Psychic Whale, a level 13 feature. Most official rogue subclasses actually get kind of situational low power features at level 13. Not all of them, some of them have actually useful stuff. Now, I don't remember off the top of my mind, but I think Inquisitive has a good level 13 feature. I really effectively don't know rogues. Unerring Guy. Yeah, I mean, regardless of that fact, most of them kind of get stuff that, is often even less powerful than some of their lower level features, right? Because some of their lower level features scale, do more stuff at higher levels, and then you get level 13, you just get something ribbon, which kind of feels like the same thing with Psychic Whale, to be honest. It's at the very least, you know, so a wizard can easily make the whole party invisible for a full hour at level 13. So, you know, he just or she casts invisibility spell on everybody, and that's just it. You can do it kind of for free, you are limited by your intelligence modifier, but it's only up to 10 minutes, and it's kind of like the same deal. If you make an attack or ability check or a saving throw, I don't know, or force the creature to make a saving throw, if you do something offensive, aggressive, you immediately break invisibility, break out of it. So it's kind of the same effect without concentration, and for the 6 times less duration. So this feature definitely seems a bit underpowered, especially because a lot of higher challenge rating monsters have special senses such as blind sight, true sight, all of the other things. So invisibility is more of a gamble at higher levels, if you ask me, than really a surefire way to avoid sight-based detection. However, that said, there is a slight synergy with level 17 feature. Now, level 17 feature, you know, for however kind of low-powered your level 9 and level 13 features are, situational low-power ribbon maybe, you are absolutely compensated for it once you hit level 17. At the very least, this feature is like, it can be read in a way, okay, now I'm guaranteed to deal some damage at least 3 to 5 times a day, up depending on your intelligence modifier, right? It's kind of like that type of benefit. That's the very least kind of benefit that you get. At best, you will use your bonus action to hide, because that's the best thing you can do. And if you are hidden, right, if you use your cunning action and use the hide action, and if you are hidden from the target has disadvantage on the saving throw, and the saving throw is intelligence saving throw. Now, I don't have the statistics, and don't quote me on that, because I'm very well might be wrong on this, but more often than not, monsters that you're dealing with, even on higher levels, don't really have intelligence save proficiencies, and even if they do, that's not really their highest bonus, highest proficiency, highest saving throw bonus. Usually they have high constitution saving throws, sometimes charisma saves, sometimes even strength or wisdom. Intelligence saves, really not that many monsters. Yeah, sure, mind flayers, I think. Not even sure whether they have intelligence save proficiencies, but it would make sense that they do. Other than that, really nothing pops to my mind. Maybe beholders, I really don't know, I'm just talking off the top of my head. But other than that, just like nothing, right? And usually, and even if there are actually a lot of monsters that do have intelligence saving throws, my experience playing the game, now everybody's experience is different, but in most cases I'm dealing with monsters that don't have high intelligence save bonuses. So once you get this feature, it's really, really good, because at best, you will use your bonus action to hide, as I said, and then you will use your action, you know, as an action while you have blah blah blah. You use one of your psychic blades to inflict, obviously, intelligence saving throw, and if the creature fails, a crap ton of damage. And on top of that, the creature, you know, gets stunned until the start of your next turn. Now, the duration of the stun condition is not very long, I will give you that, but the damage is quite juicy, damn bro. Needless to say, this massively boosts all of your other party members' damage, at least for that turn, as they have advantage on attack rolls, and the target makes all strength and dex saves at disadvantage, right? That's pretty much what the stunned condition entails. So, this is not necessarily the most powerful rogue subclass capstone on its own, you know, just in vacuum when you compare one level 17 feature to another level 17 feature, but certainly this seems like one of the most reliable, consistent, and team play oriented features introduced into playtesting like Unearthed Arcana so far. At least that's just my opinion. You can disagree with me in the comments down below. Obviously, my experience playing the game and my opinions are not always really objective. Sometimes I just talk out of my own experiences, and a lot of stuff that I talk about is actually out of my experiences, and it's just the way I see the game being played. So definitely, if you have other opinions, leave them down in the comments, and if you are still listening to the video, click that like button and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to get notified in the future of all of my future videos, if you are enjoying so far. The last subclass that we have on our schedule today is obviously the Psionics Wizard, and outside of the Mystic class as a whole, which has pretty much been almost 100% confirmed as abandoned at this point, this does really feel probably the closest thing to a stereotypical mentalist we got so far in any capacity, right? Yeah, sure, Unearthed Arcana is playtest material, blah blah blah. However, you know, whenever a new stuff gets released, a lot of people actually play these playtest Unearthed Arcana materials. I think like half of the community of on my channel uses Unearthed Arcana. I don't even know. I think let me just see what the poll was. So yeah, so Unearthed Arcana and third party UA. So 46% of people who left votes on my poll out of like 242 votes are playing using Unearthed Arcana. Now, granted, this is not a large sample size, but out of 242 people that play the game, at least like, what is it, 0.46 times, it's like 111 people. That's a lot of people who play using Unearthed Arcana. That's a lot of parties. 111. Let's just say each table has 5 people. That's like 22 tables, 23 tables. That's a lot of tables that play using Unearthed Arcana out of just 200 and something people. So I'm sure somebody's probably already playing this. Maybe, who knows? So yeah, I mean, these are the brainiacs of the highest degree. So mentally powerful that their magic is manifesting, unlike any of the ordinary wizards going around geeking out spells from their spellbooks, right? Now, of course, these wizards get a special focus, like why wouldn't they? I mean, they are psionic wizards. They should have some weird type of casting spells instead of just reading lines of, you know, from the book or whatever. So they use this special psionic focus for their spells, and in this large wall of text, it's not really explicitly defined what this psionic focus is. There are certain examples that have been given in this description, but the general intent, the way I read this feature, to me it appears like it can literally be anything, giving you great freedom in terms of how you choose to focus your wizardry magic and cast your spells. The dice rerolls, mechanically, you know, you can reroll once when you deal psychic or force damage spells, is kind of a tricky feature because at the moment there are no official cantrips. I'm not talking about level spells. Level 1 or higher spells, sure, there are those that deal force and psychic damage. However, there are really no cantrips, official ones, for wizards on the wizard's spell list that deal psychic or force damage. So it's kind of tricky in that regard. If the DM lets you play psionics, he or she really has to let you use all of these new spells, which I am going to cover shortly. So that's kind of like the one thing, and obviously, you know, the object is a spellcasting focus for you. That kind of like, I mean, it's a psionic focus, obviously, it's a spellcasting focus for you. So, you know, a Mind Sliver, a cantrip which has been introduced, what? Okay, Microsoft, you are having a brain fart, so whatever. So yeah, Mind Sliver has been introduced recently, sort of in the Aberrant Sorcerer, Deep Lurker, Warlock, Unearthed Arcana, I think like 2 or 3 months ago. And it has been reintroduced in this Psionics Unearthed Arcana, describing psionics and all of the other stuff. So it's on this list. and it's definitely probably something that you're gonna want to have learned, because you know you don't really want to waste spell slots all the time, and if you can just reroll damage and increase your damage that way, it's obviously gonna be better. You know, so you have to kind of like rely on your DM to allow you to use all of these new untested, unofficial toys anyway, and it kind of entails this feature as well. Psionic Devotion is, so I like this feature a lot. It paints the picture of a proper mentalist, one that has a more refined way of magically interacting with people and things in the closest proximity. One extra cantrip that can be cast using no components and the bonus action, and is basically undetectable in a large number of cases, especially on lower levels. I think this is definitely something that first and foremost fits the vibe, fits the theme, fits the type of character that you think about when you envision some type of mentalist, some type of mage that uses psionics to cast spells, right? Now, in terms of the choices, Friends without downside, you know, the downside of Friends cantrip is the advantage on all charisma checks. Once the Friends cantrip goes away, the creature, the target, immediately knows that you use the magic to try to deceive, persuade, or whatever you want it to do, intimidate. And obviously it kind of, it becomes hostile. So in a way, it's kind of bad, you know, and if you are a Psionic Wizard and you choose Friends, that downside goes away, so that's a really good thing. It's kind of wonky because it's not the best thing ever, as you still need a good charisma. You know, you still need like 14, maybe even 16 in charisma, and on top of that you need skill proficiencies in let's say deception, intimidation, persuasion to really make it work optimally. But it certainly opens up new roleplay possibilities for usually socially inept introverted nerds that wizards often end up being. Invisible Mage Hand is basically the same thing that Psychic Warrior, the fighter subclass, Telekinetic Hand feature is and allows you to do. However, it kind of makes sense that a class like a wizard gets it one level before than a class such as a fighter, right? Fighter is more like a martial class anyway, so wizards are spellcasters. They should be able to get the almost exact same benefit sooner. So yeah, that's it for that. Message without components or any perceivable spellcasting procedure is basically one-way pseudo-telepathy. That's kind of the way I see it. I'd probably go with Friends if you ask me, because it seems to offer the best perk of all three of these cantrips, but Invisible Mage Hand and Silent Message definitely open up a lot of new venues and possibilities for environmental social interaction as well. So I don't think you can really go wrong with any of these three options. This is just something that I would personally probably pick first. Again, you have to go with higher charisma to really make it work optimally, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely probably something that I would consider the first. Now, Thought Form is a level 6 feature, fairly low. I think it's simple, straightforward, yet very powerful, and it kind of makes sense that you get it early on instead of waiting for it, because sure, it's long rest dependent, and you, on the other side, it's limited up to your intelligence modifier, so you have a lot of mileage right away. As soon as you get it, it only becomes better as you keep pumping your intelligence modifier. You can use it more times per day, and obviously the two modes of using this feature allow you to be more flexible in case of like what you really need in that particular moment, in that particular circumstance. Now, Psionic Spell-Casting seems better at higher levels, where DMs inevitably drop more and more counter-spell mages, you know, spellcaster NPCs whose sole purpose is to cast counterspell, and it's just something that I've been guilty of. I've seen other DMs doing the same thing, because at some point you and your party just get so ridiculously broken spells. For example, Wall of Force comes to mind. Even Fireball, I mean, Fireball immediately can shut down a lot of encounters. So, you know, DMs just try to combat that, you know, try to make the encounters more challenging. Instead of dropping quadruple deadly encounters on your ass, and you still manage to kill it without any problem, because the spells are so much more powerful than the number of monsters, or the damage that they can deal on average, or all of that stuff that combat simulators or combat, you know, difficulty calculations entail. It's not, especially on higher levels, the challenge rating system really breaks down, and this is really something that's gonna combat usual countermeasures that a lot of DMs deploy when they want to challenge your party more than just dropping numbers, more and more numbers onto your heads. Psychic Resilience legitimately turns you into a tank wizard at lower levels. Because even at level 6, a lot of damage coming your way is still physical in nature and non-magical. So this feature will instantly boost your survivability in a lot of typical combat scenarios. And even higher up, like, it's not that unheard of to have a level 10 combat encounter where a lot of damage coming your way is actually non-magical. So less and less of that is gonna happen the higher your level becomes, but it usually happens at least here and there. So this is something that you're probably gonna have to rely on a lot, especially on lower levels, because wizards with the d6 die, they have way too few hit points, so being able to take half damage is gonna save your ass more often than not. Level 10 Mental Discipline is kind of similar to, so extra spell that requires no components and can be cast without a slot once a day is generally a good thing, but Dominate Person makes sense in a humanoid-infested campaign. Scrying can be used to find your lost party members or spy on the villain. But even though I really like this spell, the more I play the game, the more I think this is really more of a DM spell and not as much as a player spell, because once the player has it prepared or learned, it's kind of usually not really even used that often, because there really aren't that many situations where you legit even have to have any need to use it. But, you know, again, goes back to the point, you can use it, but you kind of have to know who to use it on. And even if you know who to use it on, you have to know when to look at that person exactly. So it kind of introduces more and more variables into play. And for players, it's usually something that a lot of DMs can always kind of circumvent in some way, shape, or form. So it becomes more of a DM ruling than really a spell that can be accurately and numerically quantifiably gauged for power level and efficiency. So that's just the way I see it, right? That said, obviously having this spell is probably gonna be used at least once during the campaign. That's just, inevitably that happens. Telekinesis is probably something that makes the most thematic sense, but speak to your DM before you inevitably decide to drop a 1,000-pound boulder on an enemy's head. Because the spell doesn't strictly define what happens in a case that you try to move an object that weighs up to 1,000 pounds. It does specify what happens if you try to, for example, I don't know, rip the armor off of the enemy or stuff like that. There is a clear, very specific description what happens in that way. But levitating or just, you know, telekinetically controlling the large boulder above someone's head and then dropping that boulder really isn't specify what happens in that case. So the way I see it, this is more like a slow working spell where you exert fine control over objects. You don't really push stuff very fast or very far away. Obviously, I mean, it's a 60 feet range. It's not very far away. So it's more like that type of spell. The intent of the spell is more for very fine control, being able to do stuff that most other spells don't really give you access to. So definitely talk to your DM. I personally think that at least some type of damage or some type of condition, maybe prone or I don't know, stunned or something happens in such case, but it's up to a DM to improvise the damage and all of the other effects. So if she deems any damage even happens in such a case, it's definitely something that you will probably want to know in advance, because if you pick this spell and you have one thing in your mind what would happen, and then your DM has another thing in mind, that usually can lead to some arguments at the table, and that usually is not really equal to good and fun playtime and, you know, fun time spent at the table. Empowered Psionics, another level 10 feature, is kind of similar to Evocation Wizard's Empowered Evocation. I think that's the name of the feature, but it's different in a way that obviously, I mean, it ties to one target, because when you deal psychic or force damage with a wizard spell, so first and foremost it has to be only psychic or force damage. Luckily at level 10 you have a lot of spells that deal that type of damage, but it only can be against one of the spell targets, so regardless of the amount of rolls, it can only be one target. I think Empowered Evocation is to one damage roll of any wizard evocation spell, so going back to Magic Missile, the good old argument whether you roll 3d4 or 1d4 or whatever amount of d4 depending on your spell slot that you use for that spell. It's been a point of contention between DMs. Jeremy Crawford pretty much said it's one roll, it's 1d4, which applies to however many missiles are being shot, but in other cases somebody other, you know, claims something else. Here it's pretty much uncheesable. It's only one target, so you can't really. I don't see immediate potential for some cheesiness and abuse. So it's kind of more balanced in that regard, and I'm pretty sure it's been worded in this way based on the fact that this feature can be cheesed out a little bit at least. Now, the mind over matter really becomes more extreme at level 14, because you get this feature called Thought Travel, right? Flying hover speed is cool, moving through other creatures and objects isn't unheard of, but you can at level 14 literally be inside of an object and not get pushed out. Now, off the top of my head, there are a couple of mechanics in the game, like, I don't know, Hound of Ill Omen, which can kind of temporarily stay in the object, but then it gets shunted out of it. Other than that, I don't really. I think you can, maybe ethereal something, but that's kind of like you're on another plane of existence. Here, you literally turn your matter into a mind, into pure energy or whatever. What does it even say? You have thought travel. You magically transform pure psionic energy. There you go. So, being this pure psionic energy, there's not a single ounce of matter in your body. You're pure energy. You just walk through the walls and other creatures, and you don't even take that much damage. Yeah, sure, it can be 10 damage, but at level 14 you can definitely survive a couple of instances of this damage, especially when, for example, on the other side of the wall there's an ancient dread dragon breathing down 26d6 worth of fire damage on you and your party members. I think we all know what option is better in that case. Not to mention how locked doors, ceilings, floors, whatever, walls, labyrinths really become a non-issue to you completely, because you just walk wherever you want, right? This thing lasts 10 minutes and you have up to 5 uses of it, more if you have magic items, which can bring your intelligence above 20. So really, this is kind of nuts, not gonna lie. And obviously psionic spells, this is more of a This is not a feature, this is just like a short list of spells which aren't mandatory, but a lot of them are they definitely first and foremost synergize with the, damage and all of that stuff that this subclass allows you to get more of. But it's, it's more of a suggestion, so it's a good short list of all the thematically fitting options. With that said, a lot of new psionic spells, psionic themed spells kind of got introduced in this Unearthed Arcana as well. So we, they got added onto the Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard spell lists. And I have a hunch that at least half of these will be made official next year, or whenever Wizards of the Coast releases a new expansion with new subclasses and other character creation options. Fact is, the game is ripe for more interesting spells, for more variety, and a lot of these look quite promising at first. Probably a lot of them are gonna get modified, tweaked, changed, maybe even shelved, but I think at least half of these are gonna see the light of the day. First on the list is gonna be, I'm just gonna go by what's written here. So Ego Whip is finally a spell that makes debuffing more viable than it is right now. My opinion and opinion of a lot of people playing the game is that buffing your allies is usually the better, more consistent outcome effect than trying to debuff your enemies, because most of the debuff effects go off of the saving throws. This one kind of goes as well, but it's an intelligence saving throw. It goes back to what I spoke about before. It's kind of like a less often proficient with saving throw that the monsters are proficient with. And even if they do, their bonuses on intelligence saving throws usually don't go up way too high. Save a few exceptions, obviously exceptions always exist. But as a whole, as a rule of thumb, intelligence saving throw is usually better. Because lower bonuses, better odds of failing the saving throw. And even if they have legendary resistance, this spell is definitely gonna force them to use that legendary resistance. Definitely rest assured that if you use this spell on a monster that has legendary resistances, your DM is definitely gonna use those. The spell inflicts disadvantage on all 3 types of d20 rolls in the game. So if you think about just like in core terms what we have in the game, we have ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws. There's really nothing else. Because you can kind of say there are skill checks, but skill checks are really only ability checks that you add your proficiency bonus on top of. And the ones that you are not proficient with, the skills that you're not proficient with, are basically just ability checks. Because you only use your ability modifier. So there are only 3 types of d20 rolls, and this spell, the target of this spell, if it fails a saving throw, has disadvantage on all 3. So whatever your party does, or whatever the monster tries to do to your party, it's gonna have disadvantage. And your party is gonna be better off, because if the monster tries to attack, disadvantage, probably better odds of failing, not hitting. Ability checks, less odds of successful grapples and all of that stuff. And saving throws, obviously, a lot of your spellcasters, including you if you have this spell, are gonna depend on saving throws, and this spell kind of buffs itself, because at the end of each of its turns, the target can make another intelligence saving throw, but it makes it at disadvantage because, disadvantage on all attack rolls, ability checks, saving throws, and on top of that, as if that's not enough, it can't even cast spells. So this is really gonna shut down a lot of monsters. And if your DM allows you to use this, I think if you ever reach level 7 and your DM allows Unearthed Arcana, give this spell a go. I think you're gonna be pleasantly surprised how powerful this is. That's pretty much it. So another spell, Eid Insinuation, is quite a powerful level 1 spell too, somewhat similar to Tasha's Hideous Laughter, because it's got a same saving throw, wisdom save. It inflicts the same incapacitated condition. repeat saving throws, right? All of that stuff. So pretty much similar in that regard. However, the range is doubled. This one is 30, this one is 60. And it deals trickles of psychic damage, right? So it's not a lot of damage, but and the damage doesn't scale. But it's a level 1 slot, right? And any damage is better than no damage for a level 1 slot, on top of incapacitating the creature and incapacitated condition, as we all know. That's actually a major debuff. So, you know, can't attack or can't take reactions or reactions. So, it's really like you just insinuate something to the id of the creature and it can't really do anything as long as it's under the effect of the spell. So, yeah, it's quite potent, and, you know, in exchange, the creature doesn't drop prone, and probably just looks stupid instead of laughing maniacally, as is probably gonna be the case with Tasha's Hideous Laughter. And obviously, if you ask me, I think the fact that there is no prone condition on the failed saving throw is pretty much better, because prone condition equals ranged characters have disadvantage on their attack rolls. Otherwise, you know, attack rolls have disadvantage. So I think this is overall probably better than Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I don't know. It's kind of similar, but it probably has to be playtested. It doesn't appear to be overpowered, but definitely overall appears to be better, you know, because same duration, concentration, double the range, incapacitated condition, doesn't fall prone, so the effect of this spell doesn't debuff your ranged attack characters, but at the same time you deal additional damage. This is a really cool spell, and I think this should get introduced, even though it does feel more powerful than a similar spell that we already have in the game. Needless to say, the prone condition buffs your melee allies, gives them more chance of crits, so yeah, it's pros and cons to everything, right? Intellect Fortress is the spell that offers a similar level of power like Paladin's level 5 spell called Circle of Power. Now, Circle of Power is kind of like an aura, right? It's not kind of an aura, it basically is an aura, 30 feet. However, this spell, Intellect Fortress, it got added to 4 different full casters spell lists. Don't forget, bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards get all of these spells that we are now talking about, right? And in that regard, like Paladin, if the Paladin wants to get a 5th level spells, he or she has to be a level 17 character. If a full caster like Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard wants to get 5th level spells, it needs to be a level 9 character. So level 9 is way sooner than level 17. Way sooner. And it's not limited to spells and magical effects only. You have advantage on all saving throws, right? All of them. Now, the downside is obviously that this is not an aura. If you want to extend the effect of this spell to other creatures, you can only do it once per turn within 30 feet, and it has to use your reaction. Now, granted, you can use it after the creature already fails the saving throw. So, you know, there's no, okay, do you want to give me advantage? No, the creature pretty much fails the saving throw and then you use your reaction and give it another chance. Now, it's kind of a push and pull, pros and cons. I don't know really which one is better. Bards can learn Circle of Power at level 10 anyway, so it's not really much of a change for them. But Warlocks, Sorcerers, and Wizards getting this spell, so look, it looks like a fair trade-off at first, but all of this definitely does mean that a lot of level 9 characters who will take this spell, you know, they will be passing way more saving throws than before, and indirectly this might make a lot of monsters whose primary threats are saving throw based do much less, you know, they are just much less dangerous way earlier than level 17, right? So in that sense, like, a lot of full casters can just get this spell if it gets made official. And even if it doesn't, you know, 46% of people play using Unearthed Arcana, at least some of that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's definitely something that needs to be seen in actual play, how it actually interacts with the game that we have in our hands. The downside, obviously, it only works on the caster, it's not an aura effect, and all of that stuff, but even then, like, oof, it's quite powerful. And obviously, it kind of buffs itself. It's not kind of buff, because you have advantage on all saving throws. So it's not only magic, as is with Circle of Power, right? Saving throws against spells and other magical effects. It's all saving throws. So it's saving throws for maintaining concentration once you take damage. So you don't really even need Warcaster feat once you get this spell. It's really, really powerful. I'm not gonna call broken or overpowered, because compared to Wall of Force, I think it's still like a game of chance. Yes, you improve your chances, but you can still roll 1 and 1 on the 2d20, so it's pretty much not gonna do much. But it improves your odds, and it's the game of odds at low sample sizes, so I don't know, it's really swingy. It looks very swingy, so that's just it. Mental barrier, speaking from my own real-life experience, when your mind enters into the state of looping repetitive thoughts, which is pretty much the description of this spell, it's hardly resistant to anything, and you have no control over the flow of your thoughts and what's really going on in your mind. Your mind just goes off of your own, and you're just a spectator. I knew what was happening, and it was very weird. Not the most pleasant experience in my life. However, this is a game, of course, so the flavor text is only there to give you some ideas. You can think about it whatever you want. Mechanically, this is quite a versatile reaction spell, similar to Shield and Absorb Elements. It makes your low-level spell slots useful at higher tiers. Instead of being a resource you rarely even rely on. And if you've ever played in a higher tier campaign, you would know how often you have to make mental saving throws. Mental meaning intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So temporary psychic damage resistance is situational, but if your mind is getting scrambled by mind flayers, you will be glad to take only half of that damage. And obviously passing the mental saving throws does become a game that's more often played at higher levels in higher tiers of play. Mind Thrust, or whatever it's the name. Okay, so Mind Sliver, obviously, it's the cantrip that's been introduced in the Unearthed Arcana Aberrant Sorcerer Deep Lurker. I think it's the same thing. I really didn't read through it. I just assumed they just copy and pasted it. But if they didn't, I don't know, let me know down in the comments. 1d6 psychic, saving throw. And the first time it makes a saving throw, it must roll a d4. I think it's the same thing, right? Let me just see. Yeah, so it's the same thing, you know, 1d6 psychic, it must roll a d4, subtract. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just good old cantrip, good for Psionics Wizard, any pretty much class that revolves around psionics, thematically or mechanically. So, you know, I don't think it's the best cantrip in the game, but it's pretty decent. The damage is not the highest, but the minus 1d4 on the saving throw is really good. It further improves the debuffing capabilities of characters that are able to use these new spells like Mind Sliver and Ego Whip and all of the other ones. Mind Thrust is another intelligence-based spell that intelligence saving throw based spell that deals a bit of damage, but most importantly seriously hampers target's action economy, because if on a failed save the target can only use dash or disengage. It also scales with higher level slots, allowing you to target multiple creatures and tilt the action economy in your party's favor. Something which I forgot to mention for Ego Whip, I don't think making this spell scale with higher level slots would be broken, because you can pretty much make it every 2 level, you know, level 4, level 6, level 8. At level 6 it can affect 2 creatures, at level 8 it can affect 3. I don't think that would be broken, and I think if it got added to this spell, it would make really good sense to use it, you know. So that's just something that clearly has been done with this spell, Mind Thrust, and I think it's a good thing, you know. Being able to use these spells at higher levels obviously makes sense, because you only have like 3 level 4 spells, you only have 3 level 2 spells, so once you get out of those, like, you have to waste higher level slots. So just give me something in exchange, you know, right? So that's my opinion. Psionic Blast, I guess it's hard to come up with interesting non-generic spell names that don't resemble each other. I mean, Mind Thrust, Psionic Blast, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Just differently named. But mechanically it's obviously a different thing. This one is a 3rd level spell, Evocation, and it's basically like... when you read this spell, it's basically like a description of a Jedi using a Force Push ability, and it even deals Force damage, so it's kind of like Star Wars, right? But the cone is rather long, and the damage is quite substantial, because, you know, when you compare to Fireball, which is an 8d6 damage, on average Fireball deals more damage, but 5d8 is way more swingy, less dice, but if you roll well on those dice, you're gonna have way more damage than the d6s. D6s tend to just average out better than the d8s. D8s, D10s, D12s are way more swingy. You can roll like 2, but you can roll 8. So, yeah. Also, it scales better with higher level spell slots. Fireball gives you more 1d6s. This spell gives you more 1d8s. So, if at some point the damage becomes better with this spell with higher level slots. It can radically change the positioning and condition of affected creatures, making it an all-around very good option for dealing with hordes of melee attackers or just battlefield control. I think this is a good choice. It can affect your allies if the positioning is wonky, but if you're dealing with some goblins or whatever, this is a very good option to have. First and foremost, it's probably gonna kill a lot of them. And if it doesn't kill a lot of them, it's probably gonna push a lot of them away. Because, you know, some of them are gonna fail the dex saving throws. And 20 feet away, synergy with spike growth. You know, you can do stuff with this. Battlefield control and changing the positioning of your allies and your enemies is often some things that don't really get considered in the actual scope of how the game is getting played. You know, pushing the enemy 20 feet away from you allows you to move away 30 feet from the enemy, so you're now creating 50 feet of distance between you and yourself and the enemy. If the enemy doesn't have ranged attack options, the enemy pretty much cannot attack you this turn unless the enemy has 50 feet of movement or more, which is not very often. Most enemies have 30-40 movement speed, so just that fact alone is something that you have to think about. And obviously there are way more things that you can do with this type of effect. Sky's the limit. Psychic Crush, for the name and the level of this spell, there's nothing good that will happen to the target of this spell. Paired with another caster casting Ego Whip, for example, and then on top of that you cast Psychic Crush, this spell can literally shut down a BBEG, Big Bad and Guy, completely, right? So the effect, in my opinion, rivals that of Otto's Irresistible Dance. It lasts for a minute. It's not a concentration. It's just a minute duration without concentration. And ignores charm condition. Otto's Irresistible Dance is pretty much doesn't work if the creature is immune to charm condition. And can deal a crap ton of damage while the Ottos cannot do any damage. And stun the target for multiple rounds while you concentrate on something else. If this spell gets made official and I ever hit a level 11 full caster, which has this spell added to its list, and my DM allows me to use Unearthed Arcana, and by just saying all of these factors, I pretty much think this is never gonna happen in my lifetime, but I can dream. I'm picking this spell 100%. I think this is a very, very powerful spell. And I'm not gonna call it broken because there are more broken spells in the game. Again, Wall of Force. I think that spell is just bullshit. But hey, this is very powerful, and if your DM allows it, use it. I don't think you're gonna be I don't think you're gonna regret one bit. Alright, intelligence saving throw, better one compared to what is Otto's. I think it's wisdom or something, yeah. So I mean, it's not even a saving throw, it gets immediately effective, so in that regard it's better. But let's just be honest, the effect of this spell way outweighs the fact that there is a little bit of a risk of nothing happening, or just half damage. Even if the creature passes the saving throw, you still deal half of 12d6 damage. That's a lot of that's actually a decent amount of damage, even for the half of that. So yeah, that's it. Thought Shield. The effect of this spell is potent in intrigue and or political, social campaigns where combat is only the last measure and real war is waged in the hearts and minds of people, including you. So king's courts, private sanctums, judges, inquisitions, that sort of thing. In more conventional campaigns, straightforward, you know, stereotypical, where you kill monsters, grab their loot, go talk to the king, get some reward. The effect is somewhat diminished and situational because how often it is that you actually have to go through the process of somebody reading your mind or talking to you telepathically or trying to determine whether you're lying or not using magic. It happens. I mean, I use it against my own players, but I only used it like once so far, twice in the last 2 years. So I don't think this is something that's gonna be very useful in a lot of campaigns. But I do know that there are people out there who play in campaigns that feature very little or even no combat. It's just politics, intrigue, playing stupid games with like imaginary characters. Okay, not stupid, but you know what I mean. You know, it's just all make-believe, and then it just more revolves around actual roleplay without any rolling of the dice and mechanics. It's just you and DM talking stories, which can be fun, but honestly, I don't really enjoy those types of games. Here and there, a session like that, sure, but every session like that, it gets boring. You know, give me a little bit of a combat where I can kill some stuff. But I guess I'm just bloodthirsty, so yeah. A pig. Anyway, new feats. 2 new feats. Playtest options. Telekinetic. +1 to intelligence. Invisible. Undetectable Mage Hand that pushes everyone around, causing chaos and mayhem. This is low-key quite powerful because it can push the enemy away from you, allowing you to effectively leave its reach without taking an attack of opportunity, while still being able to use your action to do something else other than disengage action. Outside of combat, this opens up all sorts of shenanigans and other possibilities. I mean, you can probably steal stuff better than most rogues, not to mention causing all sorts of mayhem and chaos by just pushing random people around, while nobody really knows what the heck is going on. So, yeah, I mean, some fun stuff can be done with this feat. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily powerful or even that effective, but sure, I mean, mechanically it can be effective in combat, even though it's kind of like a single type of stuff that you can do with it in most cases, but I mean, it's not gonna be useless, right? That said, I'd probably pick something else, and that something else would probably be, I mean, first and foremost, telepathic, right? Another one that evens out your intelligence. It gives you these proficiencies, of which deception, insight, and persuasion are all valid choices. I don't particularly personally like intimidation, but some people do, and that's their cup of tea. It's just not mine. Two-way telepathy is quite useful and can't be measured in ways that you can like say, okay, it works this way, therefore it's more powerful than this and that. If you're creative, you can get a lot done being able to speak with others, and those others being able to reply to you without anybody else even knowing that the conversation is taking place. You know, if you play that type of character, get into circumstances, get into a little bit of a role play, you can definitely get some stuff done which otherwise you wouldn't be able to even think about and consider doing. And yeah, after all of this has been said and done, after almost an hour and a half of me talking about all this stuff, if you are still listening to my video, listening to me talk forever ever, please drop a like down below. It helps my channel immensely, and it only costs you probably like half a second and one click of your mouse, which I don't think I'm asking for too much. And if you want to stick around and maybe watch some other videos, consider subscribing to my channel, hitting that notification bell to get notified in the future. Obviously, leave a comment down below and share with your friends if you are obviously playing D&D with your friends and this is something that they would be interested in as well. And hope to see you again. I am gonna invite you to my campaign once again. Today and tomorrow is going to be the last day of the Black Friday Cyber Monday discount. So 33.33%. Let me know, sign up for the waitlist, let me know your schedule. I am going to let you know if there's an opening, if there's actually even any possibility of forming a group, and we can even play all together in some online Discord server and play on agreed upon time of the week and day. Anyway, chuck a buck my way if you think I'm worthy. At the very least, consider Magical Secrets. You get all of these files, builds, nodes that I use in my videos. You can download them for future convenience and all of that stuff. And with that said, MinMax Munchkin out, and talk to you soon.